It's a cold March morning in Tokyo, 1995, rush hour. The subways are packed with millions of commuters, office workers, students, parents, all moving through one of the most efficient train systems in the world. But inside the crowd, among the suits and backpacks, are 5 men carrying something far deadlier than anyone could have imagined. Each holds a simple-looking package, wrapped in newspaper, so ordinary it blends right into the chaos of the station. Hidden inside, though, is liquid sarin, one of the most lethal nerve agents ever created, a chemical weapon originally developed in Nazi Germany during the 1930s. At 7:46 a.m, one of them, Ikuo Hayashi, a former heart surgeon, boards the Chiyoda line. Another man, Kenichi Hiro, steps onto the Marunouchi line. 3 others are spread across different trains, all heading toward Tokyo's central government district. Each of them places their package carefully at their feet. Then, in an act that seems almost too casual for what's about to unfold, they pull out sharpened umbrella tips and puncture the bags. Slowly, quietly, the liquid begins to seep out, evaporating into invisible death. The effects are immediate. Passengers cough. Some start rubbing their eyes, their vision blurring. A woman vomits. Another collapses against the wall. At first, people think it's motion sickness. Maybe someone spreading the flu, but it's not. Within minutes, chaos erupts. Foam at the mouth, convulsions, bodies dropping onto the floor of train cars, and the worst part? No one knows what's happening. No alarms, no announcements, just the sudden terrifying sense that something is very, very wrong. And this isn't happening on just one train, it's 5. 5 different cars, 5 different lines, all releasing sarin into Tokyo's most crowded subway routes at the exact same time. Thousands are being poisoned before anyone even knows they're under attack. The poison spreads silently, almost invisibly, through the cars of Tokyo's subway. At first, nobody really knew what was happening. Passengers thought maybe it was a leak, maybe cleaning fluid, maybe something harmless. But then the symptoms hit like a wave. People began coughing violently, their eyes tearing up, some vomiting right there on the floor. Others suddenly collapsed, twitching and gasping for breath. On the Marunouchi line, commuters staggered out onto the platform, blinded and choking. At Kasumigaseki station, victims collapsed before the train even came to a complete stop. One station worker, Kazumasa Takahashi, saw a leaking package and, thinking it was just some strange liquid, picked it up and tossed it into the trash. Minutes later, he fell unconscious and died. Everywhere there was confusion. Emergency responders weren't immediately sure what they were dealing with. Passengers who had been exposed on one train transferred to others, spreading contamination further. 40 minutes after the attack, first responders were finally told to wear gas masks, but by then the damage was done. This sarin had already seeped into crowded cars, stations, and even onto the clothes and skin of thousands of unsuspecting Tokyo commuters. Panic spread as fast as the poison, and what had started as an ordinary rush hour turned into one of the worst mornings in Japan's modern history. As ambulances raced through Tokyo's streets, the true scale of the disaster began to unfold. Victims poured into hospitals by the hundreds, eyes burning, bodies convulsing, lungs desperate for air. Doctors and nurses had never seen anything like it. Many had no idea what kind of toxin they were dealing with, only that people were dying fast. Some patients arrived walking, insisting they were fine, only to collapse minutes later. Others were carried in unconscious, their breathing shallow, skin slick with sweat. The chaos was indescribable. Hallways filled with stretchers, relatives screamed for help, and medical staff scrambled to triage. Hospitals ran out of antidotes and protective gear almost immediately. In fact, many doctors themselves were exposed. Some collapsed while treating patients, their masks and gloves proving useless against the potency of sarin. At St. Luke's International Hospital, one of the main emergency centres, doctors worked without rest, improvising treatments and relying on little more than adrenaline and instinct. By the end of the day, 13 people were dead. But the true toll was far greater. Over 6,000 men, women and children had been injured. many suffering long-term effects on their nerves, eyesight, and memory. Tokyo, one of the safest cities in the world, had been turned into a war zone overnight. The subway attack threw Tokyo into a state of fear. People avoided trains, businesses shut early, and the once bustling streets felt eerily silent. But while the city mourned and panicked, Japanese authorities were already mobilizing. Someone had orchestrated this nightmare, and they weren't going to let it go unanswered. Investigators quickly traced the attack to the doomsday cult Shinrikyo. For years, whispers about the group had circulated. Strange rituals, shady dealings, and a charismatic leader who claimed to be a modern-day prophet. But until now, the cult had largely been dismissed as eccentric, even harmless. That illusion was shattered the moment sarin gas seeped into Tokyo's veins. Raids began almost immediately. Police stormed Aum Shinrikyo compounds across Japan, searching for chemicals, weapons, and evidence of the attack. What they found was chilling. Hidden laboratories, massive stockpiles of nerve agents, and even blueprints for weapons of mass destruction. The cult wasn't just a fringe religious group. They were preparing for war. The cult's leader, Shoko Asahara, became the prime target. Blind in one eye, overweight, and with an unkempt beard, he looked more like a recluse than a mastermind. But his followers believed he was a messiah destined to survive an apocalyptic war. Under his command, Aum Shinrikyo had built a network of scientists, engineers, and chemists, all willing to die or kill for his vision. Police faced a terrifying reality. This wasn't an isolated attack. The cult had the resources, the knowledge, and the will to strike again. Every raid brought more evidence of their capabilities. Chemical plants disguised as research centers, stockpiles of weapons-grade materials, and cult members who resisted with chilling devotion. The hunt for Aum Shinrikyo was no longer just about justice for the subway victims. It was a race against time to stop whatever horror Asahara had planned next. Shoko Asahara wasn't born into power. He crafted it. Born Chizuo Matsumoto in 1955, partially blind and raised in poverty, he grew up with a fierce hunger for recognition. He studied acupuncture and dabbled in alternative medicine, but what set him apart was his obsession with spirituality. By the mid-1980s, he reinvented himself as Shoko Asahara, claiming to be the one true prophet who could lead humanity through the coming apocalypse. He blended elements of Buddhism, Hinduism, and even Christianity, preaching a doomsday vision where only his followers would survive. Charismatic and manipulative, Asahara lured in thousands, students, scientists, and even doctors, convincing them to give up everything for his cause. For many, he wasn't just a teacher. He was salvation. Under Asahara's rule, Aum Shinrikyo transformed into something far darker than a spiritual retreat. Members lived in isolated compounds, cut off from family and outside influence. They were forced into strict routines of meditation, fasting, and grueling labor. Dissent wasn't tolerated. Anyone who questioned Asahara faced brutal punishments, sometimes even death. He demanded loyalty in every aspect of their lives, arranging marriages, seizing wealth, and dictating every decision. At the same time, his inner circle of highly educated followers worked tirelessly to arm the cult. Laboratories churned out chemical weapons, while Asahara preached about the end of the world, stoking paranoia and absolute obedience. By the early 1990s, he had not only created a religion, but a fully operational militarized cult willing to kill at his command. On the morning of March 20th, 1995, Aum Shinrikyo members boarded trains carrying plastic bags filled with liquid sarin, a nerve agent so lethal that just a few drops could kill. At coordinated stops, they punctured the bags with sharpened umbrellas and fled, leaving the poison to seep across the train floors. Within minutes, chaos erupted. Passengers collapsed, choking, blinded, and convulsing as the invisible gas spread through the tunnels. 13 people lost their lives, while more than 6,000 were injured. Shoko Asahara was arrested, put on trial, and ultimately sentenced to death, along with several senior cult members.
The attack, police stormed the cult's compound in central Japan and other facilities across the country. A massive investigation led to the indictment of about 200 people on a slew of charges.
This helicopter, bought second-hand for $1 million, was another Russian souvenir. Also around this time, the Orm was gaining members within Japan's own defence forces. Soldiers helped steal industrial secrets for research on laser, biological and nuclear weapons, and formed a commando unit with the idea of assassinating the emperor and staging a coup d'etat.